you are tired. I am not talking about the kind of tired that a good night of sleep can fix. I am talking about a heaviness that sits in the marrow of your bones, a lethargy that feels spiritual. We are living in a time where the spiritual atmosphere is not defined by sharp dogmas or clear debates, but by an overwhelming weight of exhaustion. You feel it when you wake up. You feel it when you try to pray. It feels like the air itself is designed to drain you. This is not an accident. The prophet Daniel looked into the chaotic waters of history and saw a time when the enemy would change his tactics. He saw a little horn, who would not primarily destroy the saints through immediate martyrdom, but would wear out the saints of the Most High. The Aramaic word used there is Bela. It means a slow, grinding erosion. It is a war of attrition. The system, this aggregate of the world's spirit, and the technological imperative, functions as a mechanism of energy harvesting. It seeks to deplete you of the spiritual vitality required to resist the deception of the little season. But before we go any deeper, let's get one thing straight. I am not pulling this thread for likes. I'm not talking about the little season to go viral. There are easier ways to get views than triggering the entire religious system. I know the idea that the millennial kingdom might be past is triggering. It makes people angry. It makes them scared. Why? Because if the kingdom is past, then the escape hatch they were promised is gone. But I am here to tell you that the true gospel is not an escape plan. It never was. The gospel is a confirmed victory over sin and death. We are not looking for a way out. We are looking for the weapon to occupy. And that weapon is grace. To understand why you are burned out, you have to understand where striving comes from. It is not natural to you. It is an imported technology. The Book of Enoch, specifically the Book of the Watchers, preserves a narrative that the New Testament authors took very seriously. It describes how the fallen angels corrupted humanity, not just through lust, but through instruction. In 1 Enoch chapter 8 verse 1, we meet a fallen angel, a watcher. He acts like a dark version of Prometheus. He did not bring fire to warm us. He brought fire to forge. The text says, "And the watcher taught men to make swords and shields, and made known to them the metals of the earth." This is the origin of what we call watcher knowledge. This fallen angel taught humanity the arts of fabrication. Before this moment, human defense relied on the covenantal protection of God, but the watcher taught us that we could make our own safety. This technology of the sword fundamentally changed the human spirit. It replaced the vulnerability of grace with the technique of self-preservation. Look at the biblical lineage of Cain. Cain built the first city. A city is a fortress designed to eliminate the need for trust. His descendant, Tubal-Cain, was the forger of bronze and iron, and immediately after him comes Lamech, who sings the song of the sword, boasting that his weapon makes him 77 times more powerful than God's protection. This is the seed of the Burnout Society. It is the belief that you must manufacture your own security, your own identity, and your own salvation. The system tells you that if you just work harder, if you just optimize your routine, if you just get enough political power, you will be safe. That is the lie of that fallen watcher. You are fighting a spiritual war with carnal weapons, and that is why you are exhausted. We have traded the rest of Hebrews 4 for the sword of self-reliance. So what is the alternative? If the system runs on striving, how does the kingdom run? It runs on grace, but not the weak, passive grace you hear about in Sunday school. We are talking about grace as a strategic weapon. The book of Hebrews describes the ultimate goal of the Christian life as entering God's rest. But if you look at the Greek text, there is a massive shift in vocabulary that most people miss. In the early verses, the author uses the word kataposis. This means a putting to rest or a pause. It is the kind of rest you get after a long day of work. But in verse 9, he switches the word. He says, "There remains therefore a Sabbatismos for the people of God." This word Sabbatismos is unique. It links your rest to the creation Sabbath. God rested on the seventh day, not because he was tired, but because the work was finished, tetelestai. To enter Sabbatismos is not to take a nap. It is to enter into the reality that the war is already won. It is to live from a position of victory rather than fighting for victory. We see this weapon in action in 2 Chronicles 20. King Jehoshaphat is surrounded by a great multitude. It is a hopeless scenario, a little-season scenario. He does not count his chariots. He does not use the logic of fallen angels. He prays, "Lord, we have no power against this great multitude, but our eyes are upon you." God's response is the operational manual for warfare rest. He says, "You will not need to fight in this battle. Position yourselves, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." That command to stand still is the Hebrew word Yatzab. It implies a rigid, stubborn stance. It takes immense spiritual energy to stand still, when every instinct in your biology is screaming to fight or flee. Jehoshaphat appoints singers to go before the army, praising God for the victory before it happens. This is the weapon. By resting in the promise before the manifestation, they created a spiritual vacuum that drew in the power of God. The enemy armies, confused by a target that refused to play by the rules of violence, turned on each other. This is the physics of grace. The system operates on action and reaction. Force meets force. But when you respond to the system with rest, you break the circuit. You become unhackable. When you finally stop striving and enter this Sabbatismos, something violent happens. The system panics. You see, the moment you decide to rest, you stop paying the toll. And that is when you realize why you were so tired in the first place. You weren't just working. You were paying off a loan you never took out. We have talked about the weapon of rest. But we need to answer a darker question. Why is it so hard to pick it up? Why, even when you sit down to pray, do you feel a deep, grinding guilt? Why do you feel like you are constantly in trouble? Because the system is not just a machine. It is a creditor, and it believes you owe it everything. This exhaustion you feel, it isn't natural. It is an extraction. There is a specific mechanism, a spiritual technology, that keeps you in a state of perpetual debt. It is designed to make you feel owned. Next time, we are going to identify the specific spirit that enforces this debt. Psychology calls it cluster B. The world calls it narcissism. But the Bible identifies it as something far more ancient. In the next thread, we are going to expose the economy of debt. We are going to look at the Bela, the grinding consumption of the saints. And most importantly, we are going to stop using grace as a shield. We are going to start using it as a gavel. Get ready to serve an eviction notice. Stay watching.